There is a peculiar ache that comes with the passing of time, a quiet, persistent sorrow that whispers of missed opportunities, wasted years, and dreams that once burned brightly but now lie in ashes. It is a universal human experience, one that C.S. Lewis, the beloved author and theologian, understood deeply. In his writings, Lewis often grappled with the tension between human frailty and divine grace, between the brokenness of our lives and the redemptive power of God. He once wrote, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." And it is in this shouting, this divine interruption, that we find the hope of restoration. What if I told you that the years you thought were lost, the dreams you believed were shattered beyond repair, are not the end of your story? What if I told you that God, in his infinite wisdom and boundless love, specializes in restoring what seems irredeemable? This is not a mere platitude or a comforting thought to ease our regrets. It is a profound truth, one that C.S. Lewis himself explored in his works, the truth that God's power to redeem transcends time, failure, and even our deepest sorrows. In a world bound by clocks and calendars, we are taught that time is a relentless master, moving forward without regard for our mistakes or missteps. We are told that what is lost forever, that the past is a closed book, and that broken dreams are final. But C.S. Lewis challenges this worldview. Through his writings, he invites us to see time not as a prison but as a canvas on which God paints his redemptive story. Lewis reminds us that God is not confined by the linear march of time. He is the author of time, the one who holds all of eternity in his hands. And in his hands, even the most shattered pieces of our lives can be transformed into something beautiful. This essay is an exploration of that hope, a hope rooted in the promise that God restores lost years and broken dreams. Drawing inspiration from the teachings of C.S. Lewis, we will delve into the nature of divine restoration, the stories of those who have experienced it, and the ways in which we can position ourselves to receive it. Whether you are carrying the weight of regret, grieving a dream that never came to pass, or simply wondering if there is still purpose in your story, this is for you. Because the God who restores is the same God who calls you by name, and his work in your life is far from finished. Before we proceed, I invite you to watch a short presentation that reveals how to unlock God's miracles and step into your divine calling. You'll find a link to the life-changing presentation in the description below. Be sure to watch it after this one. That's my special gift to you for coming across this video. Moving on. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps, you can understand what he is doing. He is getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You knew that those jobs needed doing, and so you are not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably and does not seem to make sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he is building quite a different house from the one you thought of, throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers, making courtyards. You thought you were going to be made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace." This imagery captures the essence of divine restoration. It is not merely a return to the way things were, it is a transformation into something entirely new and glorious. When we think of restoration, we often imagine God as a divine handyman, patching up the cracks in our lives and making us functional again. But God is not a handyman, he is an artist. He does not simply repair what is broken, he recreates it. The cracks in our lives, the scars of our past, become conduits for his light to shine through, creating a masterpiece that is more beautiful than the original. Consider the story of Job, a man who lost everything, his wealth, his health, and his children. His grief was unimaginable, his suffering profound. Yet in the end, God did not merely restore Job to his former state, he transformed him. Job's loss became the soil in which God cultivated a deeper faith, a richer understanding, and an abundant blessing. This is the nature of divine restoration. It takes what is broken and makes it whole, not by erasing the past, but by redeeming it. One of the most striking promises of restoration in Scripture comes from the prophet Joel. "I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten." Joel 2:25. Locusts are indiscriminate devourers, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. The devastation they cause seems total and final. Yet God's promise is that even this can be restored. It is a promise that declares nothing is too far gone for his power. C.S. Lewis understood this promise well. In his own life, he experienced the pain of loss and the joy of restoration. After the death of his wife, Joy Davidman, Lewis wrote A Grief Observed, a raw and honest reflection on his sorrow. In it, he wrestled with the seeming absence of God in his pain. Yet, even in the midst of his grief, Lewis found glimpses of hope. He wrote, God has not been trying an experiment on my faith or love in order to find out their quality. He knew it already. It was I who didn't. Through his suffering, Lewis came to see that God's restoration is not about erasing pain, but about transforming it into something meaningful. This promise of restoration is not just for the grand narratives of biblical figures or famous authors like C.S. Lewis. It is for you and me, here and now. Perhaps you carry the weight of lost years, a season of rebellion, a time of suffering, or simply the slow erosion of dreams as life's responsibilities pressed in. Whatever the nature of your loss, the promise of restoration stands firm. God does not merely compensate for what is lost, he redeems it with abundance, purpose, and beauty. Restoration is not always instantaneous. It is a journey, one that requires patience, humility, and a willingness to surrender our timeline to God's. C.S. Lewis often spoke of the importance of surrender in the Christian life. He wrote, "The more we let God take us over, the more truly ourselves we become, because he made us. He invented all the different people that you and I were intended to be. It is when I turn to Christ, when I give up myself to his personality, that I first begin to have a real personality of my own. This surrender is not passive, it is an active trust in God's goodness and timing. It means believing that his plans are good, even when we cannot see the evidence. It means holding on to hope, even when the darkness seems impenetrable. And it means taking steps of obedience, even when they do not make sense to us. Surrender is not about giving up, it is about giving over. It is about releasing our grip on what we thought our lives should be, and entrusting our future to the one who knows what it can be. In the waiting, God often uses our experiences of loss to shape us into the people he has called us to be. Through our pain, we learn compassion. Through our waiting, we deepen our faith. These qualities are not merely byproducts of the process. They are integral to the new purpose God is unfolding in our lives. Consider the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. As a young man, Joseph dreamed of greatness. His visions given by God foretold a future where he would rise to a position of prominence and leadership. But before that dream came to fruition, Joseph's life was marked by betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. To an outsider, it would have appeared that Joseph's dreams were irreparably broken. Yet, in the midst of his suffering, God was weaving a story far greater than Joseph could comprehend. Each trial, each disappointment, was a step along the path to God's purpose. When Joseph finally stood as a leader in Egypt, saving countless lives during a famine, he could look back and see that his broken dreams had been the doorway to something far greater. This pattern is not unique to Joseph. It is a recurring theme in Scripture. God often allows the breaking of our dreams to redirect us toward his greater purpose. The Apostle Paul, for instance, likely envisioned a life of prestige and influence within the Jewish religious establishment. But God had a different plan. On the road to Damascus, Paul's old ambitions were shattered, and in their place, God planted a new dream, a mission to spread the gospel to the Gentiles. Paul's broken dreams became the foundation for a life of unparalleled impact, one that continues to resonate through the ages. What these stories teach us is that our dreams, as precious as they may be, are often too small. We imagine lives of comfort, success, and happiness, but God envisions something far grander. His dreams for us are not confined by the limitations of this world. They are rooted in his eternal purposes, designed to glorify him and draw us closer to his heart. When our dreams are broken, it is not because God delights in our pain. Rather, it is because he knows that what we are holding on to is less than what he has planned for us. Broken dreams also serve another vital purpose. They strip away our illusions of control. As long as we cling to the belief that we are the architects of our own destiny, we will struggle to fully surrender to God's will. It is only when our plans fail, when our strength is exhausted, that we truly learn to depend on him. In this sense, Broken dreams are a gift, albeit a painful one. They force us to confront our limitations and invite us to place our trust in the one who is limitless. In the book of Jeremiah, God speaks to a people who have experienced profound loss. They have been exiled from their homeland, their dreams of prosperity and security shattered. Yet, in the midst of their despair, God gives them a promise. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. These words remind us that God's purpose is always redemptive, even when we cannot see it. He is working to bring about a future that is filled with hope. For those of us who are navigating the aftermath of broken dreams, the journey toward God's greater purpose often begins with a single, difficult step: surrender. Surrender is not about giving up, it is about giving over. It is about releasing our grip on what we thought our lives should be and entrusting our future to the one who knows what it can be. This act of surrender is an act of faith, a declaration that we believe God's plans are better than our own, even when we cannot yet see them. In surrendering, we also make space for God to reveal His new vision for our lives. This revelation often comes not in a blinding flash of clarity, but in small, quiet moments. It might be a stirring in our hearts, a sense of peace in the midst of uncertainty, or a door that unexpectedly opens. As we seek God through prayer, scripture, and community, He begins to illuminate the path forward. And while the new dream He gives us may look different from what we had envisioned, it will always be marked by His goodness and love. The greatest example of restoration is found in the gospel itself. On the cross, Jesus bore the weight of humanity's brokenness. His disciples, who had dreamed of a kingdom restored, were left in despair as they watched their hopes die with Him. Yet, 3 days later, those broken dreams were transformed into the greatest victory the world has ever known. Through the resurrection, God demonstrated that He is not limited by death, sin, or failure. He is the God of new beginnings, the one who turns mourning into joy and ashes into beauty. C.S. Lewis captured this truth beautifully in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. When Aslan, the great lion and Christ figure, rises from the dead, he declares, "Though the witch knew the deep magic, there is a magic deeper still which she did not know." This deeper magic is the power of God's redemptive love, a love that restores what is broken and brings life out of death. It is a love that takes the shattered pieces of our lives and weaves them into a tapestry of grace, a masterpiece that reflects His glory. The resurrection is not just a historical event, it is the foundation of our hope. It is the ultimate act of restoration, the proof that no situation is too far gone for God's power. If God can raise Jesus from the dead, surely He can restore the broken areas of our lives. If He can turn the cross, an instrument of death, into a symbol of life, surely He can transform our pain into purpose, our loss into gain, and our despair into joy. This truth is not just for the grand narratives of Scripture. It is for you and me, here and now. Perhaps you are carrying the weight of a broken relationship, a lost opportunity, or a dream that never came to pass. Perhaps you feel as though the years have slipped through your fingers, leaving you with nothing but regret. Whatever the nature of your loss, the promise of restoration stands firm. God does not merely compensate for what is lost, He redeems it with abundance, purpose, and beauty. Consider the story of Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples. Peter had big dreams. He wanted to be a leader, a hero, someone who would stand by Jesus no matter what. But when the moment of testing came, Peter failed. He denied Jesus 3 times, just as Jesus had predicted. In that moment, Peter's dreams lay in ruins. He had failed not only Jesus, but also himself. Yet after the resurrection, Jesus sought out Peter. He did not condemn him or cast him aside. Instead, He restored him. 3 times, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" And 3 times, Peter affirmed his love. In this exchange, Jesus not only forgave Peter, but also recommissioned him. He gave Peter a new purpose, a new dream. "Feed my sheep," John 21, verse 17. This is the nature of divine restoration. It is not about erasing the past, it is about redeeming it. It is about taking our failures, our regrets, and our broken dreams and using them to create something new and beautiful. It is about giving us a second chance, not because we deserve it, but because He is a God of grace. As we reflect on the promise of restoration, let us not be discouraged by the weight of our past or the magnitude of our loss. Instead, let us fix our eyes on the one who holds all things together, the one who makes all things new. Let us trust in his power to redeem and restore, knowing that no situation is too far gone, no dream too broken, no time too lost. In his hands, even the most shattered pieces can become a masterpiece. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind." This is the hope of divine restoration, a hope that transforms our brokenness into beauty, our loss into gain, and our despair into joy. May we embrace this hope, surrender to his will, and step into the future he has prepared for us, knowing that it is infinitely greater than anything we could imagine. As we reflect on the promise of restoration, let us not be discouraged by the weight of our past or the magnitude of our loss. Instead, let us fix our eyes on the one who holds all things together, the one who makes all things new. Let us trust in his power to redeem and restore, knowing that no situation is too far gone, no dream too broken, no time too lost. In his hands, even the most shattered pieces can become a masterpiece. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind." This is the hope of divine restoration, a hope that transforms our brokenness into beauty, our loss into gain, and our despair into joy. May we embrace this hope, surrender to his will, and step into the future he has prepared for us, knowing that it is infinitely greater than anything we could imagine. If you found this video valuable, your support through sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing to the channel would be priceless. See you in the next one.